Her smile was just a little too wide, her tan far too even, and her eyes, something flickered in them that made my heart tighten. On the surface, it looked like a perfectly ordinary return from vacation. Hugs, kisses, kids holding welcome signs, a passionate evening filled with whispers. But behind that flawless facade, something didn't add up. A single, barely noticeable inconsistency, and suddenly you can't breathe, can't sleep, can't forget. And when the truth begins to seep through the smallest of details, the lack of a tan line where a ring once was, a stranger's name in her messages, laughter that rings just a little too brightly, there's no turning back. Because you realize the way back no longer exists. You haven't just lost trust. You found yourself at the heart of a carefully concealed betrayal. And now you have more than just proof. You have a plan. Cold, precise, devastating. And the worst part? You still love the one who broke you. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. We stood in tense anticipation near the baggage claim, our eyes darting among the travelers. My brother-in-law, Benjamin, waited with me, flanked by his daughters, 9-year-old Daphne and Lily, who was 7. My own children, Daniel, 12, and Sophie, also 9, hovered excitedly nearby. The kids proudly held a massive sign above their heads. "Welcome home, mommies." It had been a full 2 weeks since my wife Melanie and her sister Hannah had flown off to bask in the warmth of Belize. Escaping Minnesota's brutal January chill had almost become a family ritual, and this getaway offered the sisters a chance to soak up the sun and unwind. After a while, the first wave of arriving passengers began to file out. When the children finally glimpsed their mothers, they burst out in joyous shouts. Melanie and Hannah, glowing from their tropical retreat, both looked happier than ever, their faces bright and their skin bronzed by the sun. Melanie swept Daniel and Sophie into her arms, covering them with affectionate hugs and kisses. Then, turning to me, she greeted me with a long, lingering kiss that spoke volumes. I wrapped my arms around her, not wanting the moment to end. "I missed you every minute," I murmured softly. Melanie leaned in, her tone teasing yet full of warmth. "Just wait until tonight. I'll make sure you know how much I missed you too." She kept that promise later that evening. After 15 years together, Melanie knew me inside and out, and she understood exactly how much tan lines drove me crazy. With the kids asleep, we slipped away to our room. "Go lie down and wait for me," she whispered, a playful glint in her eye as she disappeared into the bathroom. Soon enough, I found myself under the covers, anticipation building. When Melanie finally returned, she wore nothing but a tiny thong bikini. Her face, always her most striking feature, radiated happiness, her smile wide and genuine. Still, Melanie often struggled with self-doubt. She'd talk about being too petite or lacking curves, or fret about her body's changes after pregnancy. Though her breasts had filled out over the years, she never seemed satisfied. But as she struck a pose at the edge of the bed, every line and curve seemed flawless to me, her golden tan accentuating her beauty. Slowly, she slid her thong down, revealing a sharp contrast between her tanned skin and the untouched pale areas. Subtle lines marked where the bikini had shielded her from the sun. The sight made my heart race. Then, with a gentle motion, she undid her bikini top and let it fall away, exposing her soft, pale breasts. I couldn't hold back any longer. Sitting up, I reached for her, showering her with kisses as my hands explored her warm, sun-kissed skin. My touch sent shivers through her, and soon we lost ourselves in one another, my longing for her overwhelming. Several times I found myself nuzzling into her, breathing in the scent I'd missed so much. "It's so good to be home," she breathed, her voice trembling with emotion. I missed you too. We spent most of that night reconnecting, holding each other close. A few days passed, and I found Melanie scrubbing the bathroom tub. I paused in the hallway, captivated by the sway of her hips as she worked. She must have sensed my gaze because she glanced over her shoulder, grinning. "What's got you staring?" she teased. I told her the truth. I was fantasizing about what I'd do if she wasn't wearing those pants and the house was quiet. She laughed and called me a pervert, obviously entertained. She slipped off her gloves, tossing them aside, then walked over with a sultry swagger. Pressing up against me, she whispered, "That's what you call temptation." Usually I would have responded in kind, but an unexpected feeling of unease crept over me. Something wasn't right, though I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Melanie looked a little confused by my lack of response. "Typical," she joked. "All talk, no follow-through." She gave a playful shake of her hips before turning back to her cleaning. It was then that a minute detail caught my attention. So small, but enough to send a chill through me. I froze, made a quick excuse about needing something in the garage, and slipped out, unsure if she even heard. Alone at my workbench, I tried to reason with the unsettling thought gnawing at me. Had Melanie been unfaithful while away? She was charming, and I'd always known that other men noticed her. The thing I'd noticed seemed to make sense only if something had happened on her trip. The fear gripped me. If I found out she'd betrayed me, I knew I couldn't stay. The pain of even considering it, especially for the sake of our children, was almost unbearable. What could have made her do this to us? Had I somehow fallen short as a partner? These questions ran through my mind over and over, even though I had nothing concrete, just a gut feeling that something had changed. But how could I ever know for sure? If anything had happened, it was far away, in another country. Directly confronting her seemed pointless. She would only deny it. I considered asking Hannah, but both sisters were stubborn to the core, so that would get me nowhere either. Growing up, I'd always been aware of how close sisters could be. If one of them did something questionable, the other was rarely far behind. These suspicions weighed on me, so I knew I needed to talk things over with Benjamin. Before I could do so, though, Melanie called out for me, prompting me to head back inside the house. "Why have you been out in the garage all this time?" Melanie asked, her tone tinged with concern. "You've been out there for more than 2 hours. You'll get sick." I brushed off her worry with a casual, "Just tidying up out there," and left it at that. But a new thought was already forming in my mind. I had no desire to spend the night in the same room as her. On top of that, I'd been fighting off a cold all day and honestly needed the rest. I opted to crash on the couch instead. Melanie clearly wasn't thrilled about it. "Fine," she relented. "I'll make you some chamomile tea before bed. Maybe that'll help." After Melanie headed to bed, I was left alone, wrestling with an endless barrage of thoughts. What had motivated her to do this? What choices did I really have? Should I go straight to Benjamin and ask if he could confirm anything about Hannah? Suddenly, I realized there might be a concrete way to learn the truth about Melanie's fidelity. She had recently become fixated on maintaining constant contact with her friends. Melanie's Facebook network was enormous, easily 600 or 700 people. Her Yahoo address book was even larger. If she had kept in touch with someone from Belize, I was sure there would be an email trail. Still, knowing that we both had access to each other's passwords, she might have used a different email. As I drifted off, an idea started to come together. The next morning, I was exhausted and struggled to keep my mind on work. That day, I made an appointment to meet a divorce lawyer on Friday and contacted Benjamin to invite him out to lunch. He sounded surprised but agreed. When we met, I laid everything out for him. At first, Benjamin chuckled and tried to make light of it, but when he saw how serious I was, he promised to see if Hannah was guilty of the same thing. Claiming I was sick, I left work early and arrived home by mid-afternoon. Right away, I installed a keystroke logger on our computer. It took a week before anything surfaced. Melanie eventually logged into a separate email account using the username BeachDreams1975. Her password was a mashup of our children's names and their birth years, Shedav92. Just days after coming back from Belize, she and Brian were in constant email contact. The exchanges between Melanie and Hannah left no doubt about what had happened. As it turned out, Hannah had also slept with a man named Samuel. I forwarded all of Melanie's messages to my own email address and erased any traces of the keystroke logger. Afterward, I sent Benjamin a collection of these emails. That's how the truth emerged. The affair had begun almost immediately during the trip to Belize, and both women had swapped partners more than once. They were already arranging another meetup in Chicago the following month. The cover story was shopping, while Benjamin and I, supposedly attending a Blackhawks game, provided the alibi. A quick look at both Melanie's and Hannah's Facebook profiles showed two recent friends, Brian Spencer and Samuel Rhodes, both married and living in Illinois. The proof was undeniable. I finally had all the leverage I needed. But what came next wouldn't be simple. Benjamin was still struggling to accept reality. He kept everything to himself, never confronting Hannah or admitting to himself that she might have cheated. I understood. Melanie's caring attitude toward me and the kids made it hard to believe she would ever risk our family. Her affection sometimes made me second-guess everything, which helped preserve a sense of normalcy between us, even in our most intimate moments. One afternoon, I called Benjamin at his office. "Hey, Benjamin, it's James. Can you check your personal email from work?" "Yeah, sure," he replied. "I just sent you something important. Go through all of it and then call me back." About 30 minutes later, Benjamin called again, his voice shaking with anger. "I'm finished. I can't take this. I would have done anything for her. I loved her," he vented. "Take a minute, Benjamin," I said softly. "We need to think things through. I could really use your help right now. Let's keep this between us for the moment." "I don't know if I can manage that. I just feel like exploding," he confessed. "We'll figure this out, I promise. For now, just call home and leave a message saying you're working late." That evening, we met at a bar in the historic part of town to make a plan. Our first strategy session began. "What are our options for making them really pay for this?" I asked. Short of anything violent, obviously. Benjamin sat there in silence, anger etched across his face. "I want to embarrass them in front of everyone they care about," he finally said. "You know their dad, Thomas. He absolutely dotes on his daughters." Benjamin agreed. This was the route we'd take. Everyone's aware of this, obviously. Yet there's one thing he loathes even more than the IRS, and you know exactly what it is. Benjamin's mouth twisted into a sly smirk. "Unfaithful wives," he stated. Throughout Thomas's marriage, his ex-wife, the mother of Melanie and Hannah, had been secretly seeing other men, something Thomas only uncovered once their relationship was over. When their divorce was settled, she ended up with custody of the girls, took ownership of their home, locked in a generous alimony and child support agreement, and even managed to claim a large chunk of his business. To buy her out of the company, Thomas had to shoulder considerable debt. It took years of struggle to get his business back on solid ground. After finally selling it, Thomas was financially secure, but he lived alone. He still made time to visit his daughters and see his grandchildren whenever he could. I revealed my plan to Benjamin. We had just 2 weeks left to maintain our facade as dutiful husbands. "Just stick to my lead, Benjamin," I advised. "Come down with a few colds, rack up long hours at work, and make sure you're always too tired or sick for anything romantic." We'd put on a convincing performance about once a week for the sake of appearances. Soon, we'd be done with all of it. That night, as predicted, I got home much later than normal. Melanie was already in bed, so I pretended to have a splitting headache. My thoughts kept circling back to our plan for retribution, but eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I fell asleep. Truthfully, I'd already started suspecting Melanie of being unfaithful, especially after she mentioned she and Hannah were planning a shopping trip to Chicago. I acted genuinely supportive of their idea, even suggesting they should stay in a nice hotel downtown. To really sell it, I made the hotel reservation myself with our shared credit card. The booking was made for Mr. and Miss Jarrett, double occupancy, since the sisters would be sharing a room. Melanie and Hannah were absolutely thrilled. Benjamin pitched in, offering to pay for the hotel too. He booked a room under Mr. and Miss Dalton, also set for double occupancy for Hannah and Melanie. We made sure each wife thought only one room had been arranged for the two of them. Of course, we both knew full well that neither woman intended to share a room, and we let them believe we were completely oblivious to their real plans. Their agenda was to take Friday off, catch an early flight to Chicago, and return late on Sunday. A few days later, I called Thomas Ramsey, Melanie's father, and proposed the idea of surprising the women in Chicago with the kids in tow, since the trip lined up with our 15th wedding anniversary. Thomas loved the suggestion. I asked him to reserve 3 rooms, and he agreed, thinking it would be a wonderful surprise. When it was time to drop Melanie and Hannah off at the airport, Benjamin and I were both seething inside. The two women acted like giddy teenagers off to meet secret boyfriends, laughing over nothing and bubbling with excitement. At the security checkpoint, we each kissed them goodbye on the cheek. Neither one seemed to notice that we never said, "I love you." Once we were on the road, I called our private investigator. "This is Jarrett," I said. "They'll be in Chicago soon. Are we ready?" Andrew Whitaker, our PI, assured me, "Yes, they'll be in rooms 201 and 203. All the surveillance equipment is in place. I'll have everything prepared for when you get here tomorrow." The next morning, we headed to the airport. During the flight, Thomas switched seats with my son Daniel and sat down beside me. "Look, son," he said quietly, "don't think I'm clueless. You and Benjamin look like you're on your way to a funeral. Tell me what's really happening." I came clean with Thomas and apologized for not telling him sooner. "I know how much you love your daughters," I said, "but you should know. They've been cheating, Thomas." He cut me off. "They're having affairs, aren't they?" I nodded. "Yes. They met a couple of men and spent 2 weeks with them in Belize. I've hired a private investigator to get all the evidence we'll need for divorce. As soon as we catch them in the act, we're filing." Thomas squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "I'm truly sorry, son. I know how much this hurts. I always hoped my influence would outweigh their mother's, but I'm afraid her example left a deeper mark." Thomas's eyes grew misty. "I didn't think I could feel this kind of pain again," he murmured. He eventually composed himself and went back to his seat. When we landed in Chicago, Andrew Whitaker met us at the airport and handed envelopes to both Benjamin and me. Inside were incriminating photographs and a DVD with footage from the previous night. Andrew said a process server would be in touch soon, and his team was keeping watch on both rooms. His assistant would let us know when it was the right moment to confront them. The spouses of Spencer and Rhodes would be getting similar evidence packets by noon. Benjamin and I asked Thomas and Andrew to look after the kids for a while. We needed to see firsthand what our wives had been up to. My stomach twisted as I flipped through explicit photos of Melanie, including one of her with 2 men. The worst part, it was obvious they hadn't bothered with any protection. Benjamin and I immediately realized we'd need to get tested for STDs when we got back to Minneapolis. Andrew called his assistant to check on the hotel situation. The women and their companions had gone out for lunch, so for the time being, the coast was clear. Thomas went ahead and purchased 3 separate items. At the same time, Benjamin and I made our way to the reception desk to ask for additional key cards for rooms 201 and 203, which were both registered under our names. After confirming who we were, the receptionist provided us with the spare keys. We casually mentioned that our kids had arranged a surprise and asked the receptionist not to mention anything to our wives. Together, we all took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, where our rooms were located. Roughly an hour later, Andrew Whitaker called my phone. He let me know that everyone had returned from lunch and settled back into their rooms. He also noted that there had been a change in room pairings. Melanie was now with Rhodes, and Hannah had switched to being with Spencer. "I'm downstairs in the lobby, and the process server just walked in," he informed me. "I'll send him your way," I told Andrew, then hung up and sat upright on the bed. Turning to the kids, I spoke with energy. "Okay, let's get going. Sophie, Daniel, don't forget what I told you. Grandpa and I will go in first. When I signal, both of you shout, 'Surprise, Mom,' understand?" "Don't worry, Dad," Daniel answered. "And stay outside until I give the word," I reminded them. "We understand, Dad." "No problem," the kids reassured me. "All right, let's go." We climbed the stairs and paused outside room 201. I inserted the key card and eased the door open. Thomas and I stepped inside first, with the kids following. However, they didn't wait for my cue. Almost immediately, they burst out, "Surprise, Mom! We're here!" But what we found was Melanie in bed with Rhodes. Our sudden appearance caught them completely off guard. Rhodes scrambled off the bed, snatched his pants from the floor, threw them on in a rush, grabbed the rest of his things, and bolted from the room. He wasted no time getting out. Melanie, meanwhile, leapt up, desperately trying to pull on her clothes. "No, this isn't real. How did you all get in here?" she cried out in disbelief. "Look, Mommy's naked," Sophie blurted, squeezing between Thomas and me for a better look. I snapped my fingers, and the process server entered. "Are you Melanie Jarrett?" he asked the only woman in the room who wasn't dressed. "She's my mom," Sophie chimed in, trying to help. The process server handed Melanie a sealed envelope. "You've been served," he declared, snapping a quick photo of her clutching the envelope while she tried to cover herself. Just as quickly, he was gone. "Kids, let's give your mother a moment to get dressed," I said. We left Melanie sobbing on the floor, clearly aware of what the envelope contained. In the corridor, we met up with Benjamin and his kids. "Your turn, Benjamin," I said quietly. Things hadn't gone any better in Hannah's room. Spencer had reacted violently. When Spencer was caught, he lashed out, even hitting Thomas across the face. That was all the provocation Benjamin needed to jump in and punch Spencer. Meanwhile, Hannah surprisingly came to her father's defense, scratching Spencer on the face, one small but important show of support for him. I entered just then, dragged Spencer into the bathroom and tossed his clothes in after him. "Get dressed and leave," I said coldly. Thomas, Benjamin, and the kids exited the room. Hannah, apparently unfazed, followed them into the hallway, wrapped in nothing but a blanket. Benjamin gave her a stern glare. "Go put your clothes on," he told her. Looking chastised, Hannah turned and did as she was told. The process server, who had stepped out during the scuffle, now reappeared near the door. "James Jarrett?" he called. "That's me," I replied. He handed me an envelope. "You've been served." We all regrouped upstairs. Our initial plan had been to stay overnight and talk things through with our wives, but after what had transpired, I couldn't stand the thought of spending another night with Melanie. I packed our things and let the kids know we were leaving. Thomas told us he would stay behind. He wanted to have a conversation with his daughters. Benjamin and his children left with us, heading back to Minneapolis. 4 months later, after Melanie had begged for forgiveness countless times, the court finalized our uncontested divorce. Thomas struggled to get Melanie to agree to sign the paperwork. I kept the house, since it was mine before I'd married Melanie. I was also awarded primary custody of our kids, but I didn't ask Melanie for any child support. Thomas made sure she was taken care of financially. We divided the remaining assets, and that Christmas, Thomas surprised me with a generous gift to help me start fresh, telling me it would come out of Melanie's future inheritance. Benjamin's divorce unfolded in much the same way, except his home had to be divided, since both spouses owned it equally. In a twist of fate, not long after the divorce, Benjamin and Hannah rekindled their relationship. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up back together for good. As for Melanie and me, Reconciliation is impossible. Even though I believe she is genuinely remorseful and may still love me, I can't bring myself to forgive her. Her act of betrayal obliterated any affection I once held for her. What lingered was little more than the remnants of her disloyalty, scattered like cinders along the beaches of Belize. After that, loving her again became impossible. For the sake of our children, we manage a polite coexistence, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. One afternoon, as she waited for the kids to finish getting ready for their outing with her, she abruptly turned to me. "James, I need to know. How did you ever uncover what really happened in Belize?" "My secret is an appreciation for tan lines," I replied. She looked genuinely confused. "But I always wore a bikini. We never went to any nude beaches or anything like that." I nudged her memory. "Think about it, Melanie. When you used to clean the bathroom, working with all those harsh chemicals, what would you do first?" She thought for a moment. "I'd gather the cleaning supplies, slip on rubber gloves, and roll up my sleeves." I shook my head softly. "There's something else you always did before any of that. You always took off your rings, both the wedding band and the engagement ring, before you started cleaning." I paused, letting the silence draw out the truth. "But after Belize, your finger was bare. There wasn't even a tan line to show where your rings used to be. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you." He thought he understood everything about love, loyalty, and forgiveness, until one small detail shattered his sense of certainty. Subtle, but too precise to be coincidence. From that moment on, his silence spoke louder than any confession. She says nothing happened, and he remembers the time he once said those same words, and everything they were hiding. When the past returns in the most unexpected form, every gesture becomes evidence, every "it's fine" a trap. He's determined to uncover the truth. But once he finds it, can he live with it? Where there was once trust, now there's a question. One, simple, corrosive. What if she's lying? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. Gavin opens with the observation that there are endless ways to discover your spouse is being unfaithful or is about to cross that line. The most blatant, he says, is catching them red-handed, walking into your own bedroom to find a stranger in bed with your wife. But for him, suspicions about Heather didn't erupt from such a cinematic scene. It happened on an especially cold Saturday. One of Gavin's chores that weekend was to swap Heather's regular tires for snow ones on her escape. He can still recall the grin on his face as he slipped into the car and felt the warmth blasting from the seat heater, set to the highest notch. Before heading to the tire shop, he turned it down and idled while the staff did their job. By the time he got back home, Heather was already dressed, about to leave. "I'm heading to the mall," she told him. "Want me to grab anything for you?" she asked. Now, some men might brace for the worst, visions of credit card debt swirling in their heads, but Heather was always careful with her spending. She brought home her own paycheck, avoided impulsive buys, and if anything, her absence meant he could watch the game in peace. Still, Heather wasn't going to let him turn into a couch potato. "Don't spend your whole day glued to football," she warned him. "The kids deserve some time with their dad." "Of course," Gavin agreed. Heather was gone for about 3 hours, and when she came back, she carried a single small bag. For a long mall trip, that hardly raised an eyebrow. Then something popped into Gavin's mind. "I think I left my sunglasses in your car," he said. "They're in the center console," she replied. So, he went outside to fetch them. When he opened the door, something caught his attention. The driver's seat warmer was cranked to 3 again, but what was odd was the passenger seat. It, too, was set to a comfortable 2, and he could tell it had recently been slid back a couple inches. Back in the kitchen, he tried to sound casual. "Did you shop with someone today?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, her face unreadable. "No, why?" Her hesitation spoke volumes. "No big deal." He shrugged, feigning disinterest. "You were out a while, thought maybe you met a friend for lunch." "Nope. I was by myself," she said, turning her attention to the dishes. But Gavin couldn't shake off the memory of that warmed passenger seat. He told Heather he'd be downstairs tackling a few things from her to-do list. In the quiet of the basement, his mind started racing. 30 minutes later, all the small warning signs began snapping together. Lately, Heather came home from work, but didn't share anything about her day. She'd been dropping the ball with family matters, acting forgetful and distracted. Even tiny annoyances set her off. How did Gavin recognize the pattern? It wasn't hard. He'd lived it before. His first marriage had ended with betrayal, but it was he who had cheated. He was the one who'd show up late, blame work, and forget simple things his wife Chloe had asked for. He was the husband who made mountains out of molehills, starting pointless fights. The affair, with a colleague, had lasted 4 months before Chloe found out. It started the way these things often do. Innocent office banter, sharing frustrations over lunch, talking about everything missing in their marriages. Eventually, boundaries blurred. Chloe had never doubted him. She never would have, except that the husband of the woman Gavin was seeing had hired a private investigator who delivered the proof in photos. Chloe was devastated, unable to believe Gavin would betray her. Even after his promises and apologies, she filed for divorce. "Why would I believe you this time?" she'd asked. "You swore you wouldn't do it again. And yet here we are." 3 months later, their marriage was over. Gavin admits he truly loved Chloe. The affair had been reckless, driven by ego and stupidity, a pointless mistake that destroyed everything. He kept telling himself it was nothing, that it wouldn't touch his real life. Looking back, he sees how naive that was. Roughly a year after the split, Gavin left Atlanta for Seattle. 2 years after that, he met Heather, and they eventually married. He was upfront about his divorce, but glossed over the details, blaming immaturity, not infidelity. He told himself it wasn't a lie, exactly. He just didn't want to create doubt. He swore he was done with that life. He would never hurt Heather the way he had hurt Chloe. They'd been married 6 years when temptation found its way back into his world. By then, they had 2 beautiful children together. Twice a year, Gavin's job sent him to Dallas for company training sessions, always with roughly the same group of 20 colleagues. They all got to know each other pretty well. Well enough, in fact, that whispers of office romances circulated. One person in that group stood out, Kimberly Brooks from Cleveland. She was striking, lively, and seemed to gravitate toward Gavin whenever she could. They would chat during breaks, over lunch, gradually growing closer. On Gavin's 4th trip to Dallas, Kimberly invited him to join her and some others for dinner. 7 people in total. What could possibly happen? They had a great evening, followed by drinks and dancing at a bar nearby, the hours flying by in what felt like seconds. At some point, Gavin checked his watch. The clock showed midnight in Dallas, but it was still only 10 o'clock back in Seattle. Quietly, I left the bar without alerting anyone. When I made it to my hotel, I pulled out my phone and called Heather. After 2 rings, she answered, her words heavy with drowsiness. "It's Gavin," I whispered. "I'm sorry if I woke you," I said, guilt nagging at me. She answered softly, "Don't worry about it, love. I'm just glad to hear your voice." "I realize it's late," I went on. "I just finished a late meal and a few drinks with everyone. I called because I wanted you to know I love you," I continued as I headed toward my room. "Should I ring you again after I settle in?" "No, darling. Just hearing you is enough," she said. She then asked, "How was your day?" "It dragged on forever," I confessed. "I'm flying out tomorrow at 3 a.m. I should land in Seattle by 6:30, so I'll be home for a late supper. I really miss you." "We miss you here too. The kids keep asking about you," Heather replied. "Fly safe, okay? We can't wait to have you back." I wanted nothing more than to keep her on the line, but I knew Heather needed her rest. She was balancing her job, taking care of the kids, and running the house by herself. That kind of workload could exhaust anyone, and I wanted her to be well rested when I got back. We exchanged our "I love yous," and I ended the call just as I arrived at my hotel door. I collapsed onto the bed, letting out a long sigh. That was a narrow escape. One more drink, another dance, and if I'd bumped into Kimberly again, things could have gone further tonight. What pulled me back was remembering all the red flags from the affair that destroyed my first marriage. As I lay there, I made a silent vow not to repeat my mistakes with Heather like I had with Chloe, and for the next 4 years, I stuck to that commitment. I steered clear of Kimberly Brooks and avoided a few other temptations that surfaced along the way. I wasn't a celebrity, but I learned that change was possible with determination. I kept my promise, and as far as I could see, so did Heather. With a renewed sense of commitment, I climbed the stairs and entered our kitchen. Seth and Becca, our 2 kids, were at the table chatting with Heather as she prepared dinner. Staying true was challenging, but it was worth it. Still, I sometimes wondered if Heather had been just as steadfast. Had she ever crossed that subtle line? Was there another person? Where did her loyalty lie? When I entered the kitchen and grabbed a beer from the fridge, I noticed Heather's eyes on me. I slid into a chair beside the kids, joining the lively conversation. Heather looked over, her face warm with a smile, and for a brief moment, I was sure she still loved me. But I couldn't shake the thought, if she cared so much, why risk it all? Or was I just imagining things? That weekend, I acted as if nothing was wrong, keeping my doubts to myself. Sunday morning, we even made love before going to church. By Monday, I asked my manager if I could take a little personal leave. He didn't ask questions and quickly agreed. I made a few calls and set up an appointment with a private detective. That afternoon, I sat in the reception area at Sullivan Investigations, waiting for Jake Sullivan. When the receptionist summoned me, I stepped into Jake's office. Jake was a large man, and he reminded me of a character from an old TV show my dad used to watch on VHS tapes, the one with the mustache. What was his name? Frank Conrad, maybe? Jake caught the look on my face and chuckled. "You're thinking of William Conrad, who played Frank Cannon, right? People tell me that a lot. I can't read minds, but I see that expression all the time. My wife wants me to shave the mustache, but I think it gives me a little personality." After some small talk, we got to the point. "Assuming everything checks out, we'll need about 7 days," Jake explained. "2 of my people will handle surveillance. We'll collect enough information for you to decide your next move. The fee is $10,000. If you're ready, Sheila will take care of the paperwork, and we can get started by Wednesday." 10 grand was a steep price, but all things considered, I thought it was necessary. I agreed, shook Jake's hand, and signed the documents with his assistant. When Friday night rolled around, I found myself back at the office, nerves on edge. Jake greeted me with, "There's some good news and some bad news." "Let's hear it," I replied. Jake began, "The good news is, your wife hasn't been intimate with this guy. At least not yet. His name's Damian Taylor." Damian Taylor, Heather's boss. I'd met him at her company parties a few times, never liked him much, and I doubted he thought much of me either. He always spoke to me in a condescending way. I had to admit, though, he was attractive, athletic, and around my age. As all this ran through my mind, I realized Jake was waiting for me to catch up. He was perceptive. He knew just when to pause. I gave him a nod to continue. "The bad news," Jake said, "is that she's close to crossing the line. He's invited her to a conference out of town in 3 weeks. She hasn't agreed yet, but she's thinking about it. My people watched them both on Wednesday and Thursday, One sat near them at a diner, the other followed them the next day. Neither of them suspected a thing, trust me. There were no obvious signals, no touching, no lingering stares, nothing physical yet. We succeeded in getting audio on both occasions. The team employed custom cases outfitted with directional microphones to capture everything. I'll give you both discs. Yes, they're on CDs, so you can evaluate them yourself. Just a heads up, there's quite a bit of background noise. You may need to replay the tracks a few times to catch all the details. Jake let me borrow the CDs, and I treated them as though they were evidence in a criminal case. But that wasn't all. Based on what we overheard on Wednesday, I made the decision to follow Taylor that evening after he left work, and again on Thursday. On Wednesday night, he simply went home. Thursday was different. He left the office and met up with another man at a bar. They acted as if they didn't care who might notice them together. I couldn't hear every exchange, but I caught enough to realize that your wife wasn't their first target. After piecing together what I'd overheard, I was able to verify this morning that the other man was Jackson Yates, Taylor's boss. Apparently, Cassandra Johnson was a previous victim, and now your wife was being lined up to take her place. Yates questioned Taylor about how things were progressing with your wife, criticizing him when Taylor admitted she was keeping her distance. Taylor was convinced he'd break down her resistance during their next business trip, thinking some drinks and dancing would win her over. He also brought up something from the lunch recordings. Taylor had hinted at the possibility of a promotion if your wife agreed to join their program. Jake paused, giving me time to process everything. He offered me some coffee from the pot on his desk, but I was too shaken to accept. Jake continued, I can't stand guys who act like that. Right after I heard what they said, I wrote down every word I could remember. Since their talk happened out in public, there's no assumption of privacy. My notes should be admissible in a civil lawsuit against them and the company. If it comes to that, I'm prepared to testify, either in a deposition or in court. I'll even lower my usual fee if it means seeing those two face consequences. Your expenses so far are already about half of my original estimate. If you want surveillance on your wife over the weekend, it'll probably use up the rest of your retainer. I didn't hesitate for long. No, I'll review the recordings myself. But if what you've told me is the whole story, maybe this is something we can handle privately. I'll talk to her tomorrow. There's no point dragging this out, unless she surprises me somehow. I expect she'll agree to counseling, which could help us. I'm still weighing whether to take legal action. For now, my priority is making sure those two are held accountable. Jake shook my hand, wished me luck, and told me to reach out if I needed further assistance. He said we'd square up the bill next week, just in case. I left the office early and listened to the CDs at home on my computer. During both lunches, Damian Taylor was relentless in his attempts to woo Heather. He even went so far as to accuse me of cheating on her while I was away on business in Dallas. It was a relief to hear Heather defend me every time Taylor tried to undermine my reputation. Taylor kept urging her to accompany him to an upcoming conference, insisting it would boost her career prospects. Taylor said he expected a promotion soon and that Heather would be in line for his job after he moved up. He flattered her, praising her looks, intelligence, and skills. He hinted at meeting her in a private setting, away from work, to see if their connection was more than friendship. Heather cut him off, insisting it was time to get back to the office. That was the last thing captured on Thursday's recording. It was obvious Heather was conflicted but tempted. I could relate. Years ago, I'd found myself in a similar situation. If someone had stepped in back then, maybe my first marriage would have survived. Now it was my responsibility to do what I could to save this one. I called Heather's parents and asked if they could keep the kids over the weekend. Her mom was delighted at the idea. After collecting Seth and Becca from school, we went home, packed their bags, and dropped them off at their grandparents' house for a weekend of being spoiled. Around 5 o'clock, Heather called to ask if she could stay out later with co-workers for drinks. My answer took her by surprise. I need you home right away. We have something serious to discuss. Can't it wait? Not if you want to stay married after this weekend. What's going on? If you're not home in 30 minutes, we're done. Gavin, what are you talking about? What happened? Heather, just come home. I'm not doing this over the phone. I hung up. She walked in 26 minutes later, her eyes red and swollen. Gavin, what's this about divorce? Where are the kids? They're at your parents'. Now tell me what's really going on between you and Damian Taylor. Heather looked completely blindsided, struggling to find her words before she finally spoke. I never cheated on you. I pushed further. There are other ways to betray someone besides sleeping with them. Even if nothing physical happened, lines can still be crossed. Tell me what really went on last Saturday night. She froze. All we did was talk, I swear. Why are you asking about Saturday? Don't you two already have plenty of opportunities to talk at work and over lunch? Was I being watched? Let's not get sidetracked. Let's focus on your Saturday. I swung by Damian's place to pick him up. The two of us spent some time shopping, then grabbed lunch together. When it was time to leave, I dropped him off back at his building. He invited me in, but I declined and made my way home. There was no touching, no hugs, no signs of intimacy. As Damian stepped out of the car, he leaned in for a kiss, but I turned my head, so his lips brushed my cheek instead. That was truly all there was. So he just went shopping with you for the day. Did you buy anything in particular? At that, Heather's complexion turned ashen. A dress and something else. Wait right here. I hurried upstairs to check her wardrobe. Tucked behind a row of business attire, I discovered a shopping bag. Inside were a fitted black dress, a pair of heels, and, to my shock, white silk lingerie. My jaw set as I returned downstairs. What was going on? Heather hid her face, crying since I'd left the room. Damian talked me into buying the dress and heels in case I agreed to join him at the conference next month. If I decided against that, he said I could wear them for a night out with you. And the lingerie? Heather broke down again. I'm sorry, she said. He was the one who picked those out for me. What were you thinking? Honestly, I wasn't sure, but I swear I never let things go too far. No, there was never anything physical, but I couldn't even finish the sentence. Are you considering leaving me? That depends. Do you still want this marriage? Are you ready to keep Taylor out of our lives forever? Yes, I want to stay with you. I've never doubted us, and you shouldn't either. I promise I'll never be alone with Damian again. Heather got up, crossed the room, and settled on my lap, pressing her head against my chest. Her apologies were soft, voice shaking. Please, don't hate me. For a moment I wanted to push her away, but I couldn't do it. I don't hate you, but understand, if our family comes apart over this, that might change. That night, and well into Saturday, Heather and I spent hours discussing how we could move forward. By Sunday morning, when we went to pick up the kids, any lingering doubt about her commitment to our family was gone. We agreed to start marriage counseling together. Heather had to grapple with her loyalty to us versus the pull of an affair, and it became obvious Damian Taylor was manipulative. Heather told me that Monday morning, Taylor had asked if I'd noticed her new clothes. When she replied that I hadn't checked the bag, he used it against me. See, your husband doesn't care. He probably has someone else. I told Heather the only reason I hadn't said anything was because I'd begun to suspect something was wrong and needed space to figure out how to respond. That's when I realized I owed Heather the truth about my first marriage, the real reason it failed, and how close I'd come to repeating my mistakes. I thought a counselor could help me share my past in a way that wouldn't damage our relationship further. Truthfully, we both needed some help, and the right therapist could make a difference. We also decided to contact Heather's HR department and formally report Taylor. Heather was rattled by Jake Sullivan's notes about Taylor's conduct, and rumors about Cassandra Johnson's abrupt, silent exit were circulating through the office. Heather hesitated until we saw our therapist on Tuesday. The counselor encouraged her, and together we returned the dress, shoes, and lingerie. As much as I might have wanted to see Heather in that dress or lingerie, I couldn't bear the thought of her wearing anything Taylor had picked out. A year has passed since that tumultuous weekend. Both Damian Taylor and Jackson Yates lost their jobs following Heather's report. After HR reviewed audio recordings, Jake Sullivan's notes, and conducted additional interviews, neither Taylor nor Yates received any severance. They were dismissed on the spot. Heather heard rumors that they threatened lawsuits, but those quickly vanished once they were warned about possible counterclaims. Legally. Our attorney received a letter from Heather's employer with a generous settlement offer, which she accepted, ending the matter. We thought about taking further action, but the company acted swiftly and responsibly, removing the offenders and compensating Heather. Counseling sessions had a real impact on us. Heather was stunned when she heard the truth about the end of my first marriage. She was hurt to learn, in our first session, just how close I'd come to being unfaithful myself. I told her because I wanted her to know she wasn't alone in her struggles with temptation. Our marriage could only grow if the burden didn't rest solely on her shoulders. Ultimately, neither of us had been unfaithful indeed, which, while still painful, allowed us to forgive. Honestly, Heather and I are in a better place now than we've ever been. The kids are thriving, and parenting is so much smoother when both partners are in sync and committed. We both learned important lessons. First, never look outside your marriage for emotional support that rightfully belongs to your spouse, especially not with someone who could come between you. What seems harmless at first can easily escalate. Second, if you'd be embarrassed to tell your partner about something, that's a sign you shouldn't be doing it. Third, always communicate. If your marriage is struggling, talk about it. I'm realistic. Some marriages can't be saved by honesty alone, but if yours is worth fighting for, make open conversation your priority. That's what I've learned. Take it for what it's worth. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. The door slammed shut behind him, but the silence brought no relief. What began as an argument had turned into an avalanche, slow but unstoppable. Someone betrayed. Someone took advantage. Someone stayed silent for far too long. And now, all the masks are off. He vanished from sight, but he wasn't lost. He hadn't left. He was waiting. The plan had been taking shape in the shadows, where there were no tears, no guilt, only cold calculation. They thought he was broken. They were wrong. This was only the beginning. In this game, everyone places their bets, but none of them can see what the final move will cost. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. Kevin Kessler slammed his truck door with such intensity the whole vehicle rattled. He stood stiffly at the edge of the driveway, eyeing the modest, weather-worn ranch house that he and Jade had shared, if you could call it that, for the last 14 years, each one more strained than the last. His jaw tightened. He considered barging in, reigniting their nightly conflict, stomping around just to remind her he existed. But he didn't move. Not yet. Jade's voice rang out from the doorway like a whip crack. "Well, you coming in, or planning to sulk out there all night?" she snapped. "Dinner's almost done. I'm not making extra if you're gonna loiter like some lost mutt." His heart thumped harder. A nerve twitched in his cheek. With stiff, deliberate steps, he made his way toward the front door, ready to shoulder past her. A cruel little voice in his head egged him on. "Tell her off. Remind her who paid the bills around here." But he swallowed the urge. Without a word, he brushed by her, pushing into the stale, too familiar air of the house. She followed close behind. "You're dragging mud in again," she hissed. "How many times do we have to have this fight?" "You could have cleaned it," he muttered under his breath. "Don't start with me. Not tonight." "Oh, poor you," she shot back, arms crossing like armor. "Rough day at work, so I get to be your punching bag? What a treat." They stared each other down in silence, anger simmering just beneath their expressions. Jade looked brittle, like she might crack from the pressure of holding everything together. Her hair, unevenly bleached and lazily clipped back, revealed dark roots, framing eyes sharp with accusation. Kevin's large frame strained against the sweat-darkened fabric of his shirt. He sneered, but she didn't flinch. Her chin rose in defiance. He was the one who turned away. He shuffled into the cramped kitchen where their daughter, Chloe, sat already at the table. 13 and moody, she barely glanced up from her glowing phone screen before delivering her commentary with a sigh. "Dad's home. Guess it's time for the Happy Family Act." Kevin eyed the device in her hands. "Don't you have homework?" Chloe shrugged without looking up. "Already done. I'll double-check it later." Jade dropped into a chair across from her, releasing a breath like it had been caged in her chest all day. "I'm not sitting through dinner watching you two eye-roll each other into oblivion. Sit down, Kevin." He lingered at the doorway, arms crossed. "Got a headache. Not hungry." "There's always something," she said, voice rasping with fatigue. She gestured toward the casserole cooling in the center of the table, a lumpy, slightly burnt mess of pasta and sauce. "Fine, go hungry. Chloe, dig in before it turns to concrete." Chloe poked at her plate without enthusiasm. Kevin gave them both a final, unreadable look, then turned and walked out. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't have to. He just grabbed his keys from the end table and headed straight for the door. "You're leaving? Again?" Jade called after him, sarcasm heavy in her tone. "Why bother coming home if you're just gonna disappear?" He didn't answer. His jaw clenched. "I need some air." The door slammed behind him with a sound like finality. Outside he paused, yanking at the collar of his shirt. His eyes drifted back to the truck, where the stale scent of fast food and old coffee lingered. He thought about driving nowhere in particular, just away from her. Instead, he pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit up, pacing the porch like a caged animal. The brittle grass beneath his boots cracked with each step. Behind him, the door creaked open again. Jade leaned against the frame, arms crossed like a shield. "You want a divorce?" she asked flatly. "If you're gonna threaten it again, don't bother coming back unless you mean it." He flicked ash off the edge of the porch, took a drag, then smirked. "Divorce? Why would I ruin such a perfect arrangement? We're the picture of married bliss." "Cut the crap," she snapped. "You live to play the victim. Every fight's a performance where I'm the villain and you're just the poor guy stuck with me." He stepped closer, blowing smoke in her direction. "You make it pretty damn easy. I bust my ass all day at the lot, and then I come home to this constant bitching. This isn't a marriage. It's a prison sentence." Her expression didn't change. "Prison? You bought this place, remember? I begged you to move years ago. But no, you clung to this fixer-upper like it was gold. We could have had something better, but you were too obsessed with saving every penny." His face flushed. The truth stung. He'd bought the house with dreams of flipping it, making a profit. Instead, it became a decaying symbol of everything that had gone wrong. "You want better? Then go earn it. Don't expect me to pull money out of thin air." "I do earn," she fired back, voice rising. "All those hours at the bookstore must not count in your world. You act like you're some big shot just because you run a failing used car lot. Get over yourself." Kevin's hands curled into fists. He stepped forward, chest rising and falling like he was about to explode. "Don't act like you've got my life all figured out," she spat, her tone laced with white-hot anger. "I earn just enough to keep us fed, when I decide it's even worth the effort." She gave him a hard shove, her words seething through gritted teeth. "You really think that's something to be proud of? You barely lift a finger and I'm supposed to be impressed?" He slapped her hand away, his expression turning cold. "Don't touch me. The day you actually see what I'm worth will be the day hell freezes solid." "Perfect," she fired back. "Because I'd never look up to a man who treats me like garbage." Their eyes locked in a furious stare, the silence between them thick with hostility. After a beat, Kevin flicked his cigarette onto the porch and ground it beneath his boot with deliberate pressure. "I'm done," he snarled, stepping off the wooden steps. "And this time, I mean it." "Don't bother coming back," Jade said over her shoulder, already turning away. Their fights usually ended in bitter exchanges, but this one felt like something else, something final. She slammed the door behind her, sealing him out completely. Kevin cursed under his breath and stomped toward his truck, fury pounding in his chest. For a moment, he thought about storming back up to that door just to shout some more, but instead, he climbed into the cab, started the engine, and peeled off into the darkness. A few hours later, he found himself parked behind a dingy roadside dive. The buzzing neon sign above flickered erratically, casting a jaundiced glow across the windshield. He sat there, staring at it, as if the sign might offer some kind of revelation. Inside, the bar smelled like old beer and forgotten regrets. He settled onto a battered stool at the counter. The bartender approached, but he didn't meet her eyes. "Whiskey. Straight," he muttered. She said nothing and poured without hesitation. He drank in silence. Behind him, a pack of men roared with laughter, exchanging barbs and off-color jokes. One of them tossed out a Polish joke, typical crap he'd heard forever. It always rubbed him the wrong way. Not because he was some proud flag waver, but because it was just so tired, so ignorant. Still, they weren't directing it at him. They didn't even know who he was. No one here did. He sighed and took a deeper pull than he meant to. He had intended to pace himself, but the bitterness inside wouldn't wait. Another round followed. Then he pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with missed calls. Jade, his daughter. A number he didn't recognize. Probably some scam. He flicked through his messages, hoping maybe Jade had calmed down. Nothing. Just one from Chloe. "Mom's losing it. She says you're not coming back. Is that true?" His grip on the phone tightened. Being guilted by his own daughter made his blood simmer. If only she could see what her mother was really like. Then maybe she'd stop sending him texts like that. He placed the phone screen down and turned back to his drink. The hours passed in a haze of alcohol and regret. Eventually, he settled his tab and shuffled out, murmuring a half-hearted thanks to the bartender. The cold night slapped his face, snapping some clarity back into him. When morning arrived, he found himself waking in a shabby motel room just beyond the town limits. His mouth felt like sandpaper, and his head throbbed with a relentless pulse. His phone buzzed beside him, the screen spiderwebbed with cracks. One voicemail was waiting, from someone at the lot. He played it. Amelia's voice came through faint and crackly. "Hey, Kevin. Just wondering how many cars we're bringing in from the next auction. Gavin came by to check the transmissions from the last load, but I told him you weren't here. Everything all right?" He sat up slowly, throat burning. After clearing it, he hit redial. "Yeah, Amelia, I'll be in soon," he croaked. "Don't worry about Gavin, I'll handle it." Once upon a time, Gavin had been more than just a work contact, maybe even a friend. These days, Kevin mostly saw him as a decent mechanic who kept the gears turning. Still, something about their dynamic had changed. He had a gnawing suspicion that Gavin had been running his mouth, calling him unreliable, maybe worse. Kevin never confronted him, but the thought wouldn't let go. "All right, boss," Amelia replied, her voice soft but serious. "You sound rough. Are you sure you're okay?" He exhaled slowly. "Just had a blowout at home. I'll be in soon to sort the auction list. We'll get it done." After the call, he rubbed his face, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He had no clue how to make things right with Jade. Maybe it wasn't even worth trying. The idea of leaving for good sent a dangerous thrill through him. Maybe this was it. Maybe he was finally done. He checked out of the motel and drove to the lot. Amelia was waiting inside the office, her face drawn with concern. She stood straight-backed, arms crossed, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She always meant business. Kevin, what's happening at home? He offered a dismissive shrug. Same old fight. Jade's furious, Chloe's brooding. Amelia's mouth tightened. That kind of tension, it seeps into everything, even the job, and that's not good for anyone. His jaw tensed. My personal life has nothing to do with how we run this business. Let's focus. She hesitated, then nodded. Got it. Anyway, 10 cars coming in from the auction tomorrow. We should be ready. Gavin had said he could wrap up a detailed evaluation in under a week. Kevin walked over to the desk and leafed through the pile of bills. All right, make sure he has them by Monday. I'll check in after that. Right then, the door creaked open. Gavin strode in. He was tall, hands smudged with oil, and wore a confident smirk like it was part of his uniform. Heard you and the missus had another round, he said lightly, not dropping the grin. Everything straight? Kevin's gut twisted at that familiar smug expression widening. You're not paid to pry, he snapped. Get back to the transmissions. Gavin raised both palms as if to say he meant no harm. Hey, just making conversation. Kevin ground his teeth, holding back the sharper words at the tip of his tongue. That all you needed? He asked, tone clipped. Gavin gave a casual nod. Yep, that's it. Without another word, Kevin turned and made for the garage. As he walked, he glanced back at Gavin's retreating figure, a slow, seething anger rising in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that the guy enjoyed hearing about his personal disasters. Behind him, Amelia cleared her throat. You sure about keeping him around? She asked from behind the counter. He's starting to get bold. Kevin knocked his knuckles against the wood. He's still the best mechanic in town. I'm not firing him just because he's got a big mouth. Amelia nodded slowly, but the disapproval was plain on her face. That evening, Kevin drove home, tension coiling in his stomach. A part of him braced for the worst, for his belongings to be tossed outside in the dirt. But the yard was untouched, still overgrown, riddled with dry patches and stubborn weeds. He sat in the car for a while, gathering the nerve to go inside. Jade was sprawled on the couch, watching some trashy reality show, eyes fixed on the screen. She didn't look up. Look who came crawling back. Kevin's jaw clenched. Just here to grab a few things. I don't recall saying you could stay, she muttered without glancing away. Stay, leave. Just stop stomping around like some man-sized toddler. He stepped closer, voice low and cold. That television's on because I'm still paying the bills. She let out a dry laugh, cutting and sharp. Same line, different day. Think a couple of bills makes you some kind of king? Get real. You barely keep us above water. This place is a wreck, and you're always one broken part away from rock bottom. His temper flared. At least I'm out there working. Oh yeah, she snapped. Patching up junkers and pushing rust buckets, real noble stuff. She gave a sarcastic little snort. Can't blame our kid for being embarrassed to talk about what you do. He froze. Chloe said that? Maybe. You know how kids are, Jade said, finally turning toward him with a glare. She's tired of you blowing up all the time. We both are. He opened his mouth to fire back, but the sound of footsteps cut through the moment. Chloe appeared, earbuds still in, phone clutched in one hand. She looked annoyed. Can you two knock it off already? She said. Go to your room, Kevin barked. This is between your mom and me. Is it? She asked, folding her arms. Or are we discussing how I'm supposed to explain my dad's junkyard gig to my friends? She rolled her eyes. You two act like you're stuck in middle school. Now, he snapped, pointing down the hallway. With a dramatic sigh and a stomp, she turned and disappeared. Jade got off the couch, stepping in close, her face inches from his. Don't talk to her like that, she hissed. She's not your emotional punching bag. She's mine too. His eyes narrowed. And who pays for the roof over her head, huh? Me. That mortgage has my name on it. Don't forget that. Her voice shook with fury. You love waving that around, don't you? Guess what? You walked out. You gave up the high ground when you slammed that door. He grabbed her wrist tightly, his voice a low threat. Keep pushing, and you'll be the one packing bags. Don't test me. She jerked away, eyes blazing. Put your hands on me again, and I'll call the police so fast your head'll spin. Let's see how you like a jail cell. Wouldn't even be the worst thing I've dealt with this week, he said with a sneer. His hand twitched, half lifted in rage, but he forced it down. You're not worth the effort. She glared daggers at him, holding her wrist, and stormed off to the kitchen. He stayed rooted in place, fists balled, breath shallow. Then, without another word, he turned and marched into the bedroom, yanked a duffel from the closet, and began cramming clothes inside. Within the hour, he was gone. The weeks that followed passed in a haze of budget motels and restless nights curled up in the cab of his truck. He made no move to settle things with Jade, like he was waiting for some final excuse, some irredeemable break. But the arguments only got nastier. Whenever they talked, he seized control of the conversation, issuing threats, ranting about finances, or accusing her of being ungrateful. She snapped back with barbed comments about his so-called business ventures and how he couldn't even provide a stable home for them. When the house fell silent, Kevin found himself dreading any encounter with Chloe. A heavy guilt hung over him. He had left her stuck between two people who could barely tolerate each other. And yet, when he did face her, all he managed were sharp commands or bitter outbursts. Chloe would usually flee to her room, crank her music loud, and bury herself in her phone. Before long, she stopped engaging with him at all. Meanwhile, the used car lot demanded constant attention. A new batch of vehicles arrived, and Kevin lost himself in negotiation and long hours, trying to shut out the mess his home life had become. He kept a cautious eye on Gavin, suspecting underhanded behavior, though nothing ever surfaced to confirm it. Still, Gavin's smug demeanor rubbed Kevin raw. Amelia tried to mediate, reminding him that some semblance of peace was necessary for everyone involved, but the air remained tense. One stifling afternoon, Kevin returned from a burger run to find Gavin leaning casually against the front counter, chatting with Amelia. He wore a smug grin, like he'd just landed a punchline. Amelia's expression didn't share the amusement. Kevin strode in without pause. You need something, Gavin? Gavin smiled lazily. That depend on you? Kevin tossed his burger wrapper onto a nearby table. Amelia, everything good here? She gave a stiff nod. Yes, boss. Turning his gaze back to Gavin, Kevin's tone sharpened. Then move along. This is a workplace, not a lounge. Talking up my manager isn't part of your job. Gavin gave a sarcastic salute, backing away. Whatever you say, Captain. Kevin glared after him, jaw tight, chewing the inside of his cheek. Amelia let out a breath. He's been nosing around, asking questions about you and Jade, she said under her breath. Said he's worried about your mental state. I told him to back off. Kevin cursed under his breath. He's poison. If he starts digging again, shut it down fast. Amelia leaned in closer, voice lower. Also, I overheard him earlier, on the phone. He said something about meeting someone for coffee, and he mentioned your wife by name. Kevin felt the words hit like a gut punch. Jade? Amelia nodded, apologetic. Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear much. Just enough to catch, all right, Jade, see you soon. Thought it was odd. Didn't know they were even in touch. Kevin's stomach tightened. His eyes stung. Thanks, Amelia. I'll handle it from here. He stormed to his office, slammed the door, and collapsed into his worn-out swivel chair. The thought of Jade and Gavin meeting privately sent fury surging through him. Were they laughing behind his back, planning something worse? He was drowning in anger and suspicion, but first he needed certainty, evidence, and more than anything, the business couldn't fall apart. He wouldn't let Gavin or Jade destroy what he had built. That evening, he parked outside the house he technically still co-owned, ready to spy. Chloe was probably at a friend's place or buried in books at the library. That didn't matter. What mattered was whether Gavin was with Jade right now. He crept up the dimly lit porch, catching the soft glow of a lamp filtering through the closed curtains. Peering through a narrow gap, he saw Jade on the couch, flipping through TV channels in yoga pants and a tank top. She looked exhausted, slouched and disinterested. No sign of Gavin. Kevin hovered, one hand half raised to knock, when headlights washed over the driveway. He ducked into the shadows. An old pickup pulled in. Gavin stepped out, glancing at his phone. Kevin's pulse pounded. Gavin walked toward the door casually, while Jade stood and ran a hand through her hair. She opened the door before he even knocked. He stepped inside like he belonged there. Kevin clenched his jaw, grinding his teeth. He crouched low behind a patchy bush, the dry leaves beneath him crackling. Through the window, he watched them speak in hushed tones. Jade's arms were crossed, clearly annoyed. Gavin raised his hands, possibly trying to explain or apologize. Eventually, they both sat down. Gavin inched closer. Jade didn't pull away. She rubbed her temples as she talked, her face twisted in exasperation before she let out a long, tired sigh. Gavin nodded, listening attentively. Then she reached out, briefly touched his arm. He placed a hand gently on her back. She didn't move away. Kevin felt sick. He imagined them united in contempt, sneering at him behind closed doors. Then Gavin said something that made Jade roll her eyes and spring up from the couch. She crossed her arms again, clearly irritated, and walked away. Gavin followed her. They disappeared down the hallway, toward the bedroom. Kevin's hands trembled with rage. Were they? He didn't want to imagine it. He wanted to smash the window, charge inside, and rip Gavin apart. Instead of facing them directly, a warped instinct for self-preservation pushed him toward his truck, boiling with rage. His heart pounded as he sped off, his thoughts swarming with violent scenarios. Any illusion he'd held onto, that Jade still respected him, was gone. He felt used, humiliated. Confronting her would only backfire. She'd probably mock him or worse, threaten to call the police. He needed a plan. One thing was clear now. Gavin wasn't just some grease-stained mechanic. He'd become someone Jade trusted. Maybe even more than that. For days, Kevin kept his distance from both Jade and Chloe, simmering in silence, carefully considering how to hold on to what was left of his life. If Jade thought she could shove him aside and play domestic bliss with Gavin, she had another thing coming. In the meantime, Kevin kept tabs on Gavin at the shop, demanding constant updates and conveniently ignoring the double standard. He wasn't about to let the guy slack off while possibly sneaking around with Jade behind his back. His patience thinned by the day. When Amelia brought up a problem with a title transfer, he lashed out without thinking. Later, when a customer tried to haggle, he nearly blew a fuse. Word traveled fast. Kevin was in a mood, and people began avoiding him. Gavin, on his end, turned oddly formal. The playful sarcasm was gone. Anytime Kevin approached, Gavin would suddenly hang up whatever call he was on. Amelia quietly mentioned that Gavin seemed tense lately. One edgy afternoon, after a grueling deal, Kevin spotted him near the garage. A pile of oily rags sat on the bench, and the whole place reeked of grease and nerves. Kevin's voice was sharp, almost icy. "We need to settle something. Don't lie to me." Gavin's face turned stone. "What's this about?" Kevin folded his arms tight. "I know you went to see Jade the other night." Gavin hesitated just a beat too long. "She called. Her car wouldn't start. It was personal." Kevin stepped in, close enough to feel Gavin's breath. "Don't feed me that garbage. You sneak off to my house and call it personal? You messing with me? With my wife?" Gavin threw up his hands in frustration. "Your wife? You walked out on her. She can see whoever she wants." The words hit like a slap to Kevin's pride. "Oh, that's the story now? That I abandoned her? So it's just open invitation to my home? Gavin's face twisted. You need to cool down. You don't get to speak about my family or my business, Kevin snarled, gripping Gavin's collar, his voice trembling with rage. Gavin didn't budge. Take your hands off me. Kevin's grip only tightened, his eyes blazing. Gavin's hands curled into fists. One of them might have thrown the first punch until Amelia burst in, shouting, "That's enough!" She grabbed Kevin's arm and yanked it back. He let go, his body still trembling. Gavin backed off, jaw locked, chest heaving. He took a shaky breath and stormed past Kevin. Next time, keep your hands off, he snapped as he reached the door. You're not my boss. I'm a contractor, he added, his voice flat. Then leave, Kevin shot back, nostrils flaring. Gavin stopped, sneered. No, you need me. But if you're done, that's your loss. I'll be just fine. Don't expect me to clean up your disasters. And with that, he walked out. Amelia stared at Kevin, eyes wide and stunned. Boss, this has to stop. You're going to scare off the ones who actually care. Kevin laughed, dry, bitter. Care? He's a traitor. If he wants Jade, he can have her. She gave a slow, disapproving shake of her head. Your temper's gonna destroy everything. Let me make some calls. We'll line up a replacement. Kevin hesitated, the reality sinking in. Gavin was the backbone of the garage. Fine, he muttered, the word tasting like ashes. But I'm not paying through the nose. Amelia gave a curt nod and rushed out, worry still etched into her face. That night, Kevin sat alone in his cheap motel room. A toxic mix of pride and bitterness churned in his gut. He'd stood his ground against Gavin. He wasn't a coward. But the image of Jade laughing with that guy, maybe even dragging him into her bed, made Kevin's skin crawl. The shame was unbearable. He downed half a bottle of whiskey, letting his imagination twist the knife, playing out fantasies of revenge where he came out on top and made them both feel worthless. 3 nights later, everything shattered. Kevin was dozing in his motel bed when the phone rang, jarring him awake. It was Chloe. Her voice was frantic. Dad, she cried. Mom's freaking out. She's breaking stuff and screaming about the mortgage. They're saying you're trying to throw us out, came the shaky voice on the other end of the line. Gavin is here too. They're both calling you scum. I'm really scared. Kevin's brain scrambled for clarity as he glanced at the clock. A few minutes before midnight. Why are you even awake? Shouldn't you be asleep right now? I was, she whispered, her voice broken by sniffles. But the yelling woke me up. She's freaking out over some paperwork about the house. Something about losing it? I don't understand it. Kevin exhaled sharply and pushed himself upright. I'm coming over, he said, his voice gravelly with exhaustion and frustration. Don't answer the door for either of them. Just stay in your room and wait for me, he added. The thought of telling his daughter to hide in her own home twisted something in his gut. But he knew too well how Jade could spiral, and with Gavin in the mix, the situation could spin out of control. He threw on a coat and stormed out the door. The drive dragged like time had slowed. When he finally pulled up, the neighborhood was quiet, except for the house ahead, glowing with lights from multiple windows. He killed the engine, climbed out, and made a beeline for the door. Without pause, he unlocked it and stepped inside. A wave of alcohol hit his nose immediately. In the living room, Jade was pacing frantically, alternating between angry sobs and furious rants, gripping a wine bottle that was nearly empty. Gavin lingered nearby, watching her with a strange mix of worry and smugness. Both went rigid the moment Kevin stepped into view. You disgusting piece of trash, Jade slurred, lifting the bottle as though ready to swing it. Just waltzing in like you own everything? Kevin's jaw tensed. I do own this place. Now put the bottle down before you do something really dumb. Gavin stepped forward, eyes narrowed. Watch your tone. You walked away from this family. You don't get to march back in and start barking orders. Kevin let out a dry laugh. Family? She gave up that title the moment she started sleeping with you. Jade's face contorted with rage. How dare you accuse me of that, you paranoid freak? And even if I had, it's your fault. I was alone. You left. Kevin's voice rose, cold and sharp. Then maybe it's time I make it official. Maybe I kick you both out. This is my house, don't forget it. Jade lunged, swinging the bottle at him. You bastard! Try it, I dare you! He caught her wrist mid-air, holding it firm until the bottle slipped and spilled red wine onto the carpet. Gavin shoved him hard in the chest. Back off! Gavin snarled. Kevin stumbled but didn't let go until Jade yelped. Only then did he release her. She staggered back, breathing heavily. Gavin stepped between them, fists clenched, ready to fight. Chloe! Kevin called out toward the hallway. Where are you? A small voice floated out from the shadows. I'm here, she said softly, her cheeks streaked with tears. Please, just stop. Jade whipped around, pointing furiously. Get out! You don't belong here anymore, you controlling jerk! Kevin clenched his teeth. I'll leave when I'm damn well ready. Maybe after I change the locks or finalize the sale. Gavin moved to block him again. You don't get to talk to her like that. Kevin scoffed. Oh, look at you, trying to play man of the house now, in a place I paid for? Before Gavin could answer, Chloe's voice cut through the tension, loud and raw. I'm so sick of this, she cried. You all hate each other. Just admit it and stop dragging me into it. Jade shot her a glare. Don't raise your voice at me. He's the problem here, not me. Kevin shook his head with disdain. You're both pathetic. I should have walked away for good a long time ago, and now look, she's turning into a mirror of you. Chloe recoiled. Shut up, Dad, she shouted. Regret flickered in her eyes but quickly vanished beneath a storm of anger. That's when Gavin snapped. He lunged without warning, but Kevin dodged and slammed an elbow into his ribs. Gavin grunted and stumbled backward. Jade screamed and darted toward him. Chloe's scream pierced the air. Stop it! Just stop! Kevin turned away from the chaos and snatched the pile of mail off the table. He rifled through until he found what he was looking for, a bank statement showing a mortgage nearly paid in full. Perfect, he muttered. Now I can finish the sale and make sure you're out for good. Jade's glare was pure fire. You wouldn't, he smirked. You wanted something better? Good luck finding it. I'm done covering for you. He made for the door. Jade grabbed the back of his coat and yanked with a strength that startled him. Their eyes met, hers burning with rage. Gavin limped to a halt just behind her. Off to the right, Chloe stood motionless, one hand pressed to her mouth. You won't keep bullying me, Jade hissed, her breath hot against his skin. You're vile, but you're not invincible. His stare bore down on her. Watch me. With one swift move, he broke free of her grip and stormed out. The door slammed shut with a violent bang that rattled the frame. Over the next several weeks, Kevin immersed himself in action. He contacted a lawyer, someone recommended through a loose connection, and initiated the legal steps to list the house for sale. He began stripping Jade's name from every joint account they shared. Meanwhile, he kept a wide berth from the town, devoting his days to tracking leads, attending property auctions, and expanding his network among new business partners. He moved like a man possessed, vengeance fueling every move. In his mind, Jade and Gavin were struggling just to stay afloat, while he orchestrated a quiet, calculated financial coup. He didn't spare a thought for Chloe. Through Amelia, he caught whispers. Gavin had lost some contract work thanks to his aggressive behavior, which meant his cash flow was drying up. Jade, still clinging to her modest income from the bookstore, was clearly cracking under the strain. They were cornered. That reality thrilled Kevin. Every morning, he looked in the mirror and saw someone closer to victory. His personal life may have been wrecked, but in this war, he was the one on top. He handed off day-to-day duties to Amelia. The used car lot? Sold off. to a shell company under his control, neatly keeping it out of Jade's reach. Morality didn't matter. Power did. He still owned everything, just behind layers of paper and names. The plan unfolded perfectly. Amelia handled all the filings, making it appear like new ownership had taken over. Kevin made occasional appearances, but on paper he was just a consultant now. He fed off the lie. Jade wouldn't be able to trace a thing, he was sure. Then came the final blow. His lawyer delivered the notice. Jade had 30 days before the house went up for sale. She needed to be out. The day after the letter landed, she called, furious. He ignored the ring and let it hit voicemail. Her voice came through like a storm, nearly unintelligible in her fury. But he caught the heart of it. You sick bastard. You're leaving Chloe and me with nothing. He grinned and deleted the message. 3 days later, just as the last light sank behind the buildings, he stepped into his new place. A tiny one-bedroom with bare furnishings, nothing luxurious, but it was his space. No Jade, no Chloe, no memories. As he turned the key and pushed open the door, he froze. Footsteps behind him. He turned fast, fists clenched by instinct. Jade stood at the threshold, eyes wild with rage. Her black coat hung open, hair disheveled, cheeks flushed. The hallway light cast deep shadows across her face. She looked like a woman ready to break. "How'd you find this place?" he barked. "I never gave you the address." She stepped closer. "I'm not an idiot." "Gavin gave me enough. I connected the dots." Her voice trembled, thick with emotion. "You ran away like a damn coward." Kevin's face hardened. "Because I'm sick of your games. I'm done. Get out of my way." She tried to barge past him, but he blocked the entrance with a stiff arm. Her eyes narrowed. "I need money, Kevin." He let out a bitter laugh. "Why would I give you anything? You've got Gavin now. Let him take care of you." She pushed him, voice breaking. "He's flat broke, you cold bastard. You brought this on yourself. You sold out the business. You left me with nothing and now you're crying foul? I owe you nothing. Chloe and you can figure it out." She reached for him again, but he swatted her hand aside. "You didn't care about Chloe when you were sneaking around with Gavin behind my back." Her expression turned to fury. "You twist everything. You've always needed to control every dime, every detail." He stepped forward, forcing her to back into the hall. "If that's how you see it, then so be it." Her fists clenched. "Give me something, or I swear—" "Or what?" he snapped, voice sharp. "Gonna make a scene? Call the cops? You have no leverage. I own the house. I've won. And you're getting nothing." She lashed out, face contorted in fury. He caught her wrist midair and shoved her backward. She slammed into the wall, nearly losing her balance. Her eyes blazed with hate. She lunged again, but this time he didn't hold back. He shoved her to the ground in one brutal push. "Stay down," he said, his voice raw and hollow. "I'm not your sparring partner, and I'm certainly not your ATM," she snapped, her fury spiraling into something raw, almost unhinged. She looked like she might strike again, but the unyielding steel in his gaze held her frozen. The tension hung heavy between them until she finally collapsed against the wall, chest rising and falling with ragged breaths, tears glinting faintly as they streaked down her cheeks. "You'll regret this." "I swear you will," she choked out, her voice brittle and shaking with rage. He responded with a sneer, lips twisting into a cruel smile. "Keep dreaming. Get out." She pushed herself upright, her jaw quivering. For a split second, it seemed like she might explode, her anger barely leashed. But she only spun on her heel, stumbling down the hall as her retreating footsteps echoed off the walls. He didn't move, eyes locked on her retreat until she vanished into the stairwell. His fists remained clenched, tension humming through his veins. With a harsh slam, he shut the door. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging through him like wildfire. Let her threaten all she wanted. None of it mattered now. It was done, and he wasn't going back. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.